What happens when Hollywood royalty meets actual royalty on late-night television and the cameras capture every second of an exchange so explosive it ends with security being called? In just 33 seconds, one comment would turn a friendly interview into the most shocking moment in talk show history. The studio audience was buzzing with excitement. Jimmy Kimmel walked out to thunderous applause, his trademark smile lighting up the stage as he waved to the crowd. The energy was electric. Everyone knew who the guest was tonight. This was going to be big. All right, settle down, Jimmy said, his voice warm and welcoming. We have an incredible show tonight. My guest needs no introduction, but I'm going to give her one anyway, because that's literally my job. The audience laughed. Jimmy had that gift, that ability to make everyone feel like they were in on the joke, like they were all friends just hanging out. She's an actress, a duchess, a philanthropist, and someone who has been in more headlines than I've had cups of coffee. And trust me, that's saying something. Please welcome Meghan Markle. The applause was deafening. Meghan walked onto the stage in a stunning designer dress, her smile radiant, her posture perfect. She waved to the crowd with a practiced grace that came from years in the spotlight. She sat down across from Jimmy, crossing her legs elegantly. Meghan, welcome to the show, Jimmy said, leaning forward with genuine enthusiasm. Thank you so much for having me, Jimmy. It's wonderful to be here, Meghan replied, her voice smooth and polished. Now I have to say, you look absolutely fantastic. How are you doing? How's life treating you? Oh, it's been quite the journey. There have been ups and downs, but I'm in a really good place right now. I'm focusing on the things that matter most to me. Jimmy nodded. That's great to hear. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, trying to figure out what really matters in life. So let's talk about your new project. You're working on something really exciting, right? Meghan's eyes lit up. Yes, I'm so passionate about this. We're launching a new initiative focused on women's empowerment and education. It's something that's very close to my heart, and I believe it can make a real difference in people's lives. That sounds amazing, Jimmy said. Can you tell us more about it? What inspired you to start this? Well, I've always believed that education is the key to unlocking potential. When women are educated and empowered, entire communities benefit. I've seen it firsthand in my travels, and I wanted to create something that could have a lasting impact. The audience applauded. It was a nice moment. Jimmy smiled and leaned back in his chair. Meghan, I think that's really admirable. Using your platform for good. That's what it's all about, right? Absolutely. I think when you have a voice, you have a responsibility to use it for positive change. Jimmy nodded again. 100%. Now, I do want to ask you about something that a lot of people have been curious about. The transition from acting to royal life and then to where you are now. That's got to be one of the wildest career paths anyone has ever had, right? Meghan laughed lightly. It's definitely been unconventional, I'll give you that. Unconventional is putting it mildly, Jimmy joked. I mean, most actors would kill for a successful TV show. You had that. Then you literally married a prince. That's like a fairy tale. It is a unique story, yes. So walk us through that. What was it like making that decision to step into that world? Meghan shifted in her seat, and something in her expression changed ever so slightly. Well, Jimmy, as you can imagine, it's a very complex situation. There are a lot of factors involved, a lot of history, a lot of protocol. Sure, I get that. But from your perspective, as someone who lived it, what was going through your mind? I think what people need to understand is that I went into that situation with the best intentions. I wanted to serve. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to modernize certain aspects of the institution. Jimmy raised an eyebrow. Modernize the institution? That's a pretty bold goal. Well, someone had to do it, Meghan said, and there was an edge to her voice now. I mean, we're talking about an institution that I've been doing things the same way for hundreds of years. Some things needed to change. Right. But don't you think, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, don't you think that's kind of what makes it special, the tradition? Meghan's smile became tighter. Tradition is important, Jimmy, but so is progress. You can't just hide behind tradition as an excuse to avoid evolution. No, totally, I hear you. But it's also not really your institution to change, is it? You married into it. The temperature in the room shifted. The audience sensed it. That comment hung in the air for a moment too long. Meghan's eyes narrowed slightly. Are you suggesting I didn't have the right to have opinions about my own life? Jimmy held up his hands. No, not at all. I'm just saying that there are probably people who have been part of that world their entire lives, who might have different perspectives, that's all. Of course there are different perspectives. But my perspective matters too. Jimmy, I lived it. I experienced things that you sitting here in your comfortable studio could never understand. The audience went quiet. This was getting uncomfortable. Jimmy maintained his composure, but you could see he was choosing his words carefully now. You're absolutely right. I can't understand what that's like. I'm not trying to diminish your experience, Meghan. I'm really not. It certainly sounds like you are, Meghan shot back. You're sitting here, questioning my right to have had an opinion about my own life, about the situation I was living in. I wasn't questioning your right to have an opinion. I was just pointing out that it's a complicated situation with a lot of history. And I'm telling you that I'm aware of the history, Jimmy. Very aware. But being aware of history doesn't mean you accept everything as it is. Sometimes history is wrong. Sometimes traditions are harmful. Jimmy nodded slowly. Okay. Fair enough. So what traditions did you find harmful? Meghan paused. She seemed to be considering whether to go down this road. Then she leaned forward. Let's just say that there are certain expectations, certain rules, that serve no purpose other than to maintain control and suppress individuality. Can you give me an example? I don't think I need to give you examples, Jimmy. Anyone who has been paying, attention knows what I'm talking about. Well, I've been paying attention, and I'm not totally sure I do know what you're talking about. That's why I'm asking. Meghan's expression hardened. Are you seriously going to sit here and pretend like you don't understand what I went through? I'm not pretending anything. I'm trying to have a conversation with you about your experiences, but you're being pretty vague. I'm being vague because some things are private, Jimmy. Some things are not for public consumption. Jimmy spread his hands. Then why bring them up on a talk show? The audience gasped. It was a direct hit. Meghan looked genuinely taken aback. Excuse me? I'm just saying, if things are private, they're private. But you can't allude to all this stuff and then refuse to talk about it and then get upset when someone asks you to clarify. That's not really fair. Meghan's face flushed. Not fair? You want to talk about what's not fair? What's not fair is being judged constantly, being criticized for every single thing you do, having your motives questioned at every turn. Welcome to being famous, Jimmy said, his tone still friendly but firm. That's kind of part of the deal, isn't it? No, Jimmy, it's not the same thing. What I experience goes beyond normal scrutiny. Does it, though? Every celebrity deals with criticism. Every public figure has people who don't like them. That's just reality. Oh, so now you're minimizing racism? Meghan said, her voice rising. The audience went completely silent. Jimmy's expression changed. This was serious now. Whoa, hold on. I never said anything about racism. Don't put words in my mouth. You're sitting here telling me that what I experienced was just normal celebrity criticism. That's minimizing the very real issues I faced. No, I'm saying that being criticized comes with being famous. I'm not saying all criticism is the same or that racism doesn't exist. Those are two totally different things, but you're conflating them, whether you realize it or not. Jimmy took a breath. He was trying to stay calm, trying to keep this from spiraling further. Meghan, I think there's a miscommunication here. I'm not trying to invalidate your experiences. I'm really not. But I also think it's fair to point out that you've made a career out of talking about how difficult your life has been while living a life of incredible privilege. And I think some people find that a little hard to relate to. Meghan's mouth dropped open. Incredible privilege? Are you kidding me right now? You live in a mansion in California. You have millions of dollars. You have millions of dollars. Opportunities that 99.9% of the world will never have. Yes, that's privilege. You have no idea what it costs to maintain the kind of security we need, the kind of life we have to live because of the threats we face. Jimmy couldn't help himself. A small laugh escaped. The cost of maintaining your mansion? Really? That's what we're talking about? Don't laugh at me, Meghan said coldly. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at the idea that you think people are going to feel sorry for you because your mansion is expensive to maintain. I never asked anyone to feel sorry for me. Actually, that's kind of exactly what you've been doing for the past few years. The gloves were off now. Meghan stood up slightly in her chair. How dare you? You don't know anything about what I've been through. You don't know what it's like to have the entire world against you, to have your own family turn on you, to be driven out of your home. Driven out? You chose to leave. Nobody forced you to do anything. That's not true and you know it. No, I don't know it, because every interview you've done, you talk about how you made this brave decision to leave and start a new life. You can't have it both ways. Either you were forced out or you chose to leave. Which is it? Meghan was visibly angry now. Her carefully maintained composure was cracking. You're twisting my words. You're deliberately misunderstanding what I'm saying. I'm using your own words, Meghan. In one interview, you say you had no choice. In another, you talk about how empowering it was to make the decision. Those things contradict each other. Context matters, Jimmy. Then give me the context. Explain it to me. I don't owe you an explanation. You're on my show. The whole point of being here is to talk, to explain things, to have a conversation. If you don't want to do that, then why did you come? Meghan stood up fully now. You know what? This was clearly a mistake. Jimmy remained seated, looking up at her. Sit down, Meghan. Let's talk this through like adults. Don't tell me to sit down. You've been disrespectful from the moment I walked out here. I've asked you legitimate questions. If you think that's disrespectful, then maybe you're not ready to do interviews. Not ready? I've done hundreds of interviews. Yeah, with people who lob you softball questions and let you say whatever you want without any pushback. That's not a real interview. That's PR. Meghan grabbed her microphone and started to remove it. I'm done with this. Oh, come on, don't do that. Don't walk off. That's so dramatic. Dramatic? You've been attacking me for the past 10 minutes. I've been asking you questions. That's literally my job. You came on a talk show, Meghan. What did you think was going to happen? That I was just going to sit here and nod while you complained about your hard life in your California mansion? You're a bully, Jimmy. You're a bully, and you're using your platform to tear me down. The audience was completely stunned. Some people looked uncomfortable. Others looked riveted. This was unfolding in real time, and nobody knew what to do. Jimmy stood up now too. I'm a bully? Are you serious? Right. Now, I asked you about your own contradictions. That's not bullying. That's journalism. This isn't journalism. This is a hit piece. You brought me here under false pretenses. False pretenses? Your people reached out to us. You wanted to come on the show to promote your initiative. I said yes. Nobody tricked you into being here. Meghan's voice was shaking with anger. You clearly had an agenda from the start. You wanted to make me look bad. You're doing that all by yourself, Meghan. I'm just asking questions. Gotcha questions. Trap questions designed to make me look unreasonable. They're only trap questions if you don't have good answers. If your positions were consistent and defensible, you'd have no problem answering them. Meghan pointed at Jimmy, her hand trembling. You know what your problem is? You can't stand that I won't just sit here and take it. You can't stand that I'm standing up for myself. Standing up for yourself? You're throwing a tantrum because I didn't kiss your feet and tell you how brave you are for leaving a palace to live in a slightly smaller palace. How dare you? How dare you minimize what I've been through? I'm not minimizing anything. I'm pointing out that you have a level of wealth and opportunity that most people can't even imagine, and yet you spend all your time talking about how victimized you are. It rings hollow, Meghan. People are struggling to pay rent, to feed their families, to keep the lights on, and you're out here complaining about the pressures of being rich and famous. Meghan's face was red now. You have no right to judge how I process my trauma. Trauma? You call being criticized on Twitter trauma? It's more than that, and you know it. Then explain it. Use specific examples. But you won't, because it's all vague allusions and implications. You hint at all this terrible stuff, but you never actually say what happened, because if you did, people might realize it's not as bad as you make it sound. Meghan was breathing heavily. I've said what happened. I've been very clear. No, you haven't. You've done the opposite of clear. You've been intentionally vague so that people can fill in the blanks with the worst possible interpretations. That's not true. It absolutely is true. You make these cryptic comments about how hard things were, and then when people ask for details, you say it's too private or too painful. But it's not too private to capitalize on, is it? It's not too painful to sign multi-million-dollar deals to talk about it. Meghan took a step toward Jimmy, her finger still pointed at him. You don't get to tell me what I can and cannot talk about. You don't get to decide what my pain is worth. Jimmy didn't back down. And you don't get to come on my show and expect me to just nod along while you rewrite history and play the victim. I am a victim, Jimmy. Whether you want to acknowledge it or not. Of what? Of marrying into one of the most famous families in the world? Of having more money and resources than you could spend in 10 lifetimes? Of having a global platform that most people would kill for? Yeah, you're really suffering. Money doesn't solve everything. No, but it solves a lot. And it certainly makes your problems different from the problems that regular people face. You want empathy? Show some empathy for people whose problems are actually about survival, not about whether the palace staff was nice to them. Meghan's voice was ice cold now. You're disgusting. You're a disgusting person, and this show is disgusting. Then leave. Nobody's stopping you. Oh, I'm leaving. Trust me, I'm leaving. But people are going to hear about this, Jimmy. People are going to know how you treated me. Good. Let them know. Let them see the clip. Let them decide for themselves who was unreasonable. Here. Meghan ripped her microphone off completely, the wire snapping. You haven't heard the last of this. Jimmy crossed his arms. Is that a threat? It's a promise. You're going to regret this. The only thing I regret is giving you a platform to promote whatever it is you're selling this week. Meghan turned to walk off stage, but then spun back around. You know what? I feel sorry for you. I feel sorry for anyone who has to interact with someone as small-minded and mean-spirited as you. And I feel sorry for anyone who has to listen to you complain about your charmed life one more time. Meghan looked at the audience, as if appealing to them. You all saw this, right? You saw how he treated me? The audience was silent. A few people looked away. Nobody said anything. Unbelievable, Meghan muttered. She started walking toward the exit, her heels clicking loudly on the floor. Jimmy called after her. Meghan, this is childish. Just sit down and let's finish the interview. She didn't turn around. She kept walking. Jimmy looked at the camera. Well, folks, I guess that's that. We're going to take a quick break. But Meghan wasn't done. She stopped at the edge of the stage and turned back one more time. You're going to pay for this, Jimmy. My lawyers will be in touch. Jimmy actually laughed. Your lawyers? For what? Asking you questions on a talk show? Good luck with that. Defamation, harassment, emotional distress. You can't sue someone for hurting your feelings, Meghan. Grow up. We'll see about that. A production assistant approached Meghan, trying to calm her down, trying to guide her backstage, but Meghan pulled away. Don't touch me. I can walk myself out. Jimmy sat back down in his chair, shaking his head in disbelief. The cameras were still rolling. The audience didn't know what to do. Meghan walked completely off the stage and disappeared behind the curtain. The sound of a door slamming echoed through the studio. Jimmy looked directly at the camera, his expression a mixture of amusement and exhaustion. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Meghan Markle. Everybody, give her a round of applause for that exit. A few people clapped awkwardly. Most just sat in stunned silence. I've been doing this show for 20 years, Jimmy continued, and I can honestly say that was one of the most bizarre interviews I've ever had. I asked her some basic questions about her own statements, and she completely melted down. He paused, running a hand through his hair. Look, I don't enjoy conflict. I really don't. But I also can't sit here and pretend like everything makes sense when it doesn't. I can't just smile and nod when someone contradicts themselves or plays the victim while living a life of incredible luxury. The audience was warming up to him again. A few people nodded. And you know what the craziest part is? She came here to promote a women's empowerment initiative. Women's empowerment. But the second someone challenges her or questions her, she threatens to sue and storms off. That's not empowerment. That's entitlement. More applause now. People were starting to understand what had just happened. I hope she's okay, Jimmy said, and he sounded sincere. I really do. But I also hope she takes a step back and thinks about why she reacted the way she did. Because that wasn't the reaction of someone who's confident in their positions. That was the reaction of someone who can't handle being questioned. He looked down at his desk, then back up at the camera. We're going to take a real break now. When we come back, we'll try to salvage what's left of this show. The stage manager yelled, "Clear," and the cameras stopped rolling. Jimmy stood up and walked over to his producer, who looked as shell-shocked as everyone else. Backstage, Meghan was reportedly demanding to speak to the head of the network. Security had been called, not to remove her, but to manage the situation. Her team was frantically making phone calls. Back in the studio, the audience was buzzing. People were pulling out their phones, texting their friends, posting about what they had just witnessed. This was going to be everywhere within minutes. Jimmy returned to his desk. The show had to go on. They had other guests scheduled, other segments planned. But everyone knew that nothing else that happened tonight would matter. This was the moment. This was what people would remember. The cameras started rolling again. Jimmy put on a smile, though it looked a little forced now. Welcome back, everybody. Well, that was something, wasn't it? The audience laughed nervously. I think we're all going to need a minute to process what just happened. But you know what? The show must go on. We have a great band here tonight, and after the break, they're going to play us out. As the show wrapped up, Jimmy couldn't stop thinking about the exchange. Had he been too hard on her? Had he crossed a line? He didn't think so. He had asked fair questions. He had pointed out real contradictions. If she couldn't handle that, that was on her, not on him. But he also knew that this was going to be a story, a big story. And depending on how it was spun, he could come out looking like either a hero who stood up to entitlement or a bully who attacked a woman. He hoped it would be the former, but you never really knew with these things. In the green room, Meghan was still there, still fuming. Her publicist was trying to do damage control, already drafting statements, already reaching out to friendly media outlets to give them the real story of what had happened. He ambushed me, Meghan was saying. He brought me on under the pretense of a friendly interview and then attacked me. This was planned. Her team nodded sympathetically, but privately, some of them wondered if maybe, just maybe, she had overreacted. Maybe walking off hadn't been the best move. Maybe threatening to sue hadn't been the best move. But nobody was going to say that to her. Not right now. Outside the studio, paparazzi were already gathering. Word had spread fast. They knew something big had happened, and they wanted to be there when Meghan left the building. Inside, Jimmy was finishing up his final segment. He was professional, charming, funny, but there was an undercurrent of tension that the regular viewers could sense. Something had shifted tonight. Something had broken. When the show finally ended and the cameras stopped for the last time, Jimmy let out a long breath. His producer came over and clapped him on the shoulder. "That was intense," the producer said. "Yeah," Jimmy agreed. "Yeah, it was. Do you think we should have cut to commercial sooner?" Jimmy shook his head. "No. People needed to see that. They needed to see what happens when you ask someone real questions and they can't handle it. Her team is threatening legal action." Jimmy waved his hand dismissively. "Let them threaten. We didn't do anything wrong. We have it all on tape. Let people watch and decide for themselves." And that's exactly what happened. Within hours, clips of the interview were circulating online. Everyone had an opinion. Some people sided with Jimmy, praising him for not backing down and for asking tough questions. Others sided with Meghan, claiming he had been disrespectful and aggressive. The debate raged on social media, on news shows, in living rooms across the country. It became one of those cultural moments that divided people, that revealed deeper tensions about celebrity, privilege, victimhood, and accountability. But in that studio, in those minutes when it was happening, it was just two people, two strong personalities, clashing in real time. Neither willing to back down, neither willing to admit they might be wrong, and an audience watching it all unfold, knowing they were witnessing something that would be talked about for years to come. The lights in the studio dimmed. The crew started packing up equipment. Another show was in the books. But this one was different. This one would be remembered. This one had crossed a line from entertainment into something rawer, something more real, something that revealed the truth about what happens when the carefully constructed facades of celebrity come crashing down. Jimmy walked to his dressing room, loosening his tie. Tomorrow there would be meetings, damage control, statements to review. But tonight, he had done what he thought was right. He had asked questions. He had pushed back. He had refused to play along with a narrative. That didn't make sense. And if that made him the bad guy in some people's eyes, so be it. He could live with that. In her car, being driven away from the studio, Meghan stared out the window at the city lights. She was still angry, still convinced she had been wronged. But somewhere, deep down, there might have been a flicker of doubt, a question of whether maybe, just maybe, she had let her emotions get the best of her. Whether walking off had been the right call, whether she had proven his point rather than her own. But those thoughts were quickly pushed away, buried under layers of justification and righteous indignation. Tomorrow, her team would spin this. They would make her the victim again. They always did. And she would believe it. Because believing anything else was too painful, too uncomfortable, too challenging to the story she had built about herself and her life. The car drove on through the night, carrying her away from the scene of the confrontation, but not from its consequences. Because this moment, this exchange, this collision of egos and perspectives would echo far beyond that studio, far beyond that night, becoming part of the larger story of who she was and how she was seen. And whether she liked it or not, Jimmy's questions would linger, unanswered but not forgotten, a reminder that sometimes the hardest thing to face is not the criticism of others, but the contradictions within ourselves.